Hi, this is Ren, and this is All Walks of Film. So, Portlandia is a pretty interesting show. I haven't watched much of it, and quite frankly, when I watched it originally, I did not like it because I thought it was a hipster show that was essentially too hipster to be cool. Which makes me sound like a hipster, I know. Wow. So, a feminist bookstore just came out, and they are pissed at Portlandia. I will tell you, this is not new news, but this is the first time I'm hearing about it. And the article was published on September 27th. So, here's the article. Feminist bookstore made famous on Portlandia posts "Fuck Portlandia" sign, which, before I get into it, makes it sound like the feminist bookstore is pissed that the show is actually making them money. So the subtitle of this is, "The setting of Portlandia's Women and Women First bookstore is now protesting the show's trans misogyny." I don't even know what trans misogyny is, but I will get into that later. The bookstore itself is actually called In Other Words. And this bookstore is on the Northeast Killingsworth Street and has been a women's community center and home to feminist literature since its founding in 1993. But to many across the country, and even here in Portland, it's best known as the bookstore Women and Women First from IFC's Portlandia. For 6 seasons of the show, In Other Words, has allowed Portlandia to film the saga of feminist bookstore owners Tony and Candace, played by Carrie Brownstein and Fred Armisen. Well, that relationship has apparently soured. In Other Words bookstore currently has a sign on their door reading, "Fuck Portlandia, trans misogyny, racism, gentrification, queer antagonism, devaluation of feminist discourse." Photographs on Instagram show that "Fuck Portlandia" sign has been up as far back as this spring, while season 6 was airing. The characters of Tony and Candace played a much smaller role during season 6 than the 5 previous seasons, not appearing until episode 8. First Feminist City, in which Tony and Candace declare war on for-profit feminism. Oh, well, feminism isn't about for-profit, of course. It's about the advancement of women. Equality? Or advancement? What is feminism today? I don't know. Some say it's about equality, some say it's about the patriarchy and how men are oppressing them, and some argue that it's destroying the gender binaries, and I don't even fucking know anymore. We reached out to In Other Words to ask reasons behind the "Fuck Portlandia" sign. A representative from the store, who identified themselves as Mickey Carnage, wow, what a name that is, wrote that In Other Words would likely be willing to answer questions. In multiple emails, Carnage then repeatedly asked that Women and Women post a link to the online fundraiser by the bookstore. The bookstore also raised $14,000 in a previous online fundraiser in 2014, which $14,000 is pretty good, especially for a bookstore when half the people don't even fucking go to bookstores anymore. WW sent questions via email, including what specific content had spurred the store to put up the sign after a 6-year association with the show. WW declined, as a matter of policy, to promise a link to the store's fundraising platform in exchange for the interview. Carnage then sent the following message. "After some consideration and research, we have decided to officially tell the Wilmette Weekly to go fuck themselves. Your paper has absolutely zero journalistic professionalism, and you are scummy rape apologists. Thanks for the opportunity, though. Have a great night." So let me get this straight. Portlandia makes this store famous allowing them to get like $14,000. Now, granted, they didn't want to put their fundraising site on their website, which is fine. But like the reaction from this fucking store is priceless. Getting on the trans misogyny of the show, I guess they're referring to Fred Armisen because he's playing a character named Candace, and the character is trans and really into like women's rights and all this kind of stuff and into vagina pillows and stuff. I don't know. So to explain this a little more, Portland Feminist Bookstore explains why they put up the Fuck Portlandia sign. We stand behind our collective decision to discontinue our relationship with the show, and we fucking love the sign. On Tuesday, the bookstore refused to comment to Wilmette Week in very colorful terms. Today, however, in other words, has put up a blog post explaining how their relationship with Portlandia came to an end. This was a direct response to a particular egregious filming of the show in our space, which saw our store left in a mess, our staff mistreated, our neighbors forced to close and lose business for a day without warning, and our repeated attempts to attain accountability or resolution dismissed. It was also a direct response to the show, which in every way diametrically opposed to our politics and vision of society we're organizing to realize. A show which has a net negative effect on our neighborhood and the city of Portland as a whole. Shortly after this decision was made, a volunteer placed the Fuck Portlandia sign in our window. And kind of based on that, I gotta say, they kind of have a point, because I've been on film sets before. They can be pretty bad. Like, you know, especially when they're borrowing a space. I've been on film sets where I'm like looking at what they left behind. Hell, I opened my apartment one time for a film set and they just fucking left shit out. And I was like, I fucking let you borrow this space. What the fuck? You can't even clean it? I should have fucking charged their ass. But I didn't, because I was a film student. But in this case, they do have a point. We've reached out to the producers at Portlandia for a response as the circumstances of that shoot, as well as a few other claims on that post, but have not yet received comment, which means that they most likely are guilty of what In Other Words claims they did. In Other Words also says that they have not made significant money from shooting fees, and they have not profited much from the attention offered by fans of the show. There's no itemized accounting of any item received from the show in their 990 nonprofit filings. Although, In Other Words, 2012 form does show $600 in rental income. So I'm guessing they don't shoot for a month, and like $600 that's a decent price. Now, granted, Portlandia is a show that's seen by millions, so I can see why they might want more money, but like they're not really changing the space that much. At least it doesn't look like it. In Other Words, also criticizes the lack of representation of black people on the show, and writes that Portlandia's crew ask In Other Words to remove a Black Lives Matter sign in their window for the shoot, which they write that they refuse to do. Okay, Black Lives Matter is popular now. Like, it feels more natural for them to have it in their sign. I mean, like, how many businesses do you go to that don't have a Black Lives Matter sign? Most likely gun stores, but that I'm just saying. And in a phrase familiar from the Fuck Portlandia sign, the store cites the trans-antagonistic and trans-misogynist nature of Tony and Candace sketches, declaring, LOL, Fred Armisen in a wig and dress, to be a deeply shitty joke, whose sole punchline throws trans femmes under the bus by holding up their gender presentation of mockery and ridicule. And I get their point. The show does use Candace as kind of a joke, and given the fact that trans people have a hard time in our society already, I can get why that's offensive, but I mean, it's not that bad. But then again, I'm not trans. I have met a couple trans people in my life, so I don't really want to speak for them. In other words, blog post closes with the following message. The current board, staff, and volunteers were not involved in the decision made 6 years ago to allow Portlandia to film at In Other Words. We stand behind our collective decision to discontinue our relationship with the show. And we fucking love the sign. So, I just want to close and say that Portlandia is an interesting show because it is a show filmed in Portland about hipsters, making fun of hipsters, and other modern liberal cultures. And Portland has always been kind of like this interesting place. I mean, it's one of those places where like it has like the most amount of strip clubs per capita of any other fucking city. There are also like a lot of like ex-cons and all this kind of stuff. Like if you want to know more about Portland, read anything by Chuck Palahniuk. As far as In Other Words, wow, I really hate that as a name for a store. On one hand, I totally get, but on the other hand, it's like it made your store popular. And granted, while the presentation on the show is ironic, like pretty much everything in Portlandia that I've seen, this just represents everything about modern feminism that I fucking can't stand. So, what do you think? Do you think that Portlandia is trans misogynist? Do you think Portlandia wrecked their fucking bookstore after shoots? I mean, quite frankly, I don't know. I legitimately don't know. So it's up for speculation. But like I said before, based on my experience with film sets, I can say that the crew probably, left in a hurry because they're probably working long hours and they didn't care. And then the store gets mad about that. Whenever you're borrowing a space, even if you're paying for the space, whenever you're borrowing a space, you got to treat it with respect or else the people are going to bitch about it. And granted, some people are going to bitch more than other people, but, it's important to respect a space, especially when you're using it. I'm guessing that they're probably not going to have access to the store anymore. I mean, they might be able to work some kind of agreement out, but I don't know. Anyways, let me know what you think in the comments below. And as always, thanks for listening.